Hello family. Welcome to AfriVibe Stories, home for captivating African tales. Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. Sunlight spilled across the manicured lawns of the Okeke family mansion, gilding each gold drape and ivory ribbon with an almost divine glow. It was a morning the entire region had been waiting for, Adaora's white wedding. The footpaths were ankle-deep in crushed rose petals, and the air trembled with the pulse of highlife music spilling from towering speakers. Guest cars lined the driveway like a snake of polished steel, each bearing guests in matching Osoabi fabrics, the reds and golds of Adaora's chosen color palette fluttering in the breeze. The scent of jollof rice and spicy suya curled through the air, promising a feast to rival any feast of kings. From the threshold of the grand foyer, Emeka, resplendent in an embroidered ivory agbada and a scarlet cap, watched as his bride approached. Adaora had always carried herself with a regal poise, a practiced tilt of the chin, an elegance that belied the turbulence of her past. Today, his bride moved beneath a canopy of white roses and frangipani, her gown a cascade of lace and silk, accented by coral beads cradled on her neck and wrists. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation, but behind them lay something else. Something simmering. The wedding planner, a fastidious woman with a clipboard the size of a sacred text, directed the final procession. Cousins arranged themselves in neat rows, women fanning themselves with beaded fans, men smoothing their Ankara jackets. A troupe of drummers dressed in broad-woven wrappers pounded the first bar of the entrance song, and a hush rippled through the crowd. Adaora stepped forward as the music swelled, the beating of the equi-drums resonating like her own heartbeat. Each step was deliberate, measured, as though she were traversing a bridge between two realms, the innocence of childhood and the promise of a new chapter. At the edge of the aisle, Emeka took her hand, his touch a warm reassurance. He leaned in and whispered, "This is our day, Ada," and she managed a small smile, nodding, yet her gaze drifted across the sea of faces to the grand courtyard arch where a familiar figure stood. Nneka, the family's firstborn and de facto matriarch, had inherited more than land and titles when Okoro Okeke's sudden illness claimed his life years ago. She had inherited power, and the ruthlessness that came with it. Adaora remembered being 13 when her father fell ill, and her mother, whose laughter had once filled every corner of their modest home, knelt on cold marble under Nneka's unforgiving stare. The sting of that memory still pricked her heart like an unattended scorpion's barb. Now, Nneka's arrival was announced by the crisp crack of a photographer's flash. She descended the sweeping staircase with a bearing that commanded both reverence and fear. Clad in a tailored wrapper of deep crimson velvet and embroidered gold thread, her geli sculpted into an imposing crown, she paused at the bottom step. A hush fell. The DJ's turntable scratched in the distance until her personal herald, an orange-robed chief with a ceremonial staff, took the microphone and bellowed her name. Applause thundered in the courtyard. Guests rose, offering emphatic claps that echoed off marble columns. Emeka straightened, and Adaora felt her hand grow cool in his grasp. Her pulse fluttered. She did not clap. She did not smile. She only watched, each silent breath a drumbeat of gathering storm. As Nneka accepted bouquets of red roses and shouted blessings into the mic, Adaora's mind drifted back again to that fateful day in Aba. Her mother's wrapper had been torn, her father's wedding ring wrested from her trembling fingers. Nneka's words, "Life is for the strong. Crying won't build a house," had landed on her like a verdict. Adaora had vowed then that she would build something better, something Nneka could never take away. But the scar remained hidden beneath layers of composure. Aunt Nneka swept across the courtyard toward the main tent. Her entourage parted like the Red Sea, leaving a path of deference. Adaora's cousin Ifeoma, stationed at the welcome table, offered Nneka a special libation of palm wine in a carved calabash. Nneka raised it high, waterlight glinting in the morning sun, and drank deeply. The crowd cheered again. Then Nneka's gaze found Adaora's. For a heartbeat, they held each other's eyes, predator and prey locked in a silent exchange. Adaora felt a tremor run through her spine. She looked away first, pretending to adjust the filigree of her veil. Guests whispered, "Why isn't she kissing her aunt's hand? Is there trouble in paradise?" Yet no one dared ask aloud. The ceremony began under a canopy of white and green, symbolizing fertility and prosperity in Igbo tradition. The priest, clad in a cassock the color of pure ivory, delivered the opening prayer. Adaora and Emeka knelt on velvet kneelers embroidered with gold thread. The priest spoke of covenant, of promise, and Adaora closed her eyes, offering a silent plea to the ancestors. When she opened them, however, it was to a sea of anticipating faces, and there, at the front, stood Nneka, her lips curved in an inscrutable smile. Adaora forced herself to stand tall. She gripped Emeka's hand as the priest asked, "Do you, Adaora Okeke, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" A soft breeze shifted the lace train of her gown, and she thought she heard her mother's warm voice on that wind. "Speak your truth." Adaora exhaled and nodded. "I do." The words tumbled from her lips, their weight both liberating and heavy with foreboding. As Emeka answered in kind, the congregation erupted in joyful ululations and horn blasts, drums resuming their relentless timpani. But Adaora did not celebrate. Her heart pounded, not with joy, but with a furious energy she could scarcely contain. She stole one more glance at Nneka, who stood unmoved, regal as carved ebony. In that moment, Adaora knew the wedding had only just begun. Beneath the orchestration of music and ritual lay a darker symphony, a reckoning that would demand more than vows or roses. And Adaora was ready to confront it. Beyond the tent, vendors under colored umbrellas sold akra and zobo, their calls mingling with children's laughter. Adaora felt the warmth of her homeland in the spicy aroma of suya. Chinyere leaned close. "Smile, Ada. Today is yours." Adaora breathed in, steadying herself. Ahead, Nneka reclined under a palm, coral beads gleaming. Adaora's gaze hardened. This day must honor her mother's dignity. Then the kola nut ceremony began. An elder raised the nut high and spoke its ancient oath. Emeka offered Adaora the cup of palm wine. Their fingers brushed. She drank, sweetness and bitterness mingling on her tongue, an omen, joy tainted by grief. As the drums resumed, Adaora lifted her chin, bracing for what came next. Every guest watched, unaware of the simmering storm ahead. The sun had almost reached its zenith when Adaora slipped away from the bustle of her own wedding celebration, seeking refuge beneath a towering iroko tree under ancestral branches at the edge of the mansion's sprawling compound. The deep shade was a godsend, cooling her heated cheeks as she pressed her back against the rough bark. Guests' laughter and music from the reception tent seemed miles away compared to the pounding memory in her chest. At 13, Adaora had watched her life fracture in that very same compound. The Okeke estate had been her family's sanctuary, a red brick house surrounded by orange trees, and a carved wooden swing that her father had built for her. But grief is a fierce tide. When her father fell ill, Aunt Nneka arrived like a force of nature, sharp-shouldered, precise, unwavering. The firstborn of the Okeke lineage, she had always been groomed to lead, and she saw Adaora's father's weakness as an opportunity. "I'm taking over management of the estate," Nneka had announced at a family meeting. Her voice had carried the weight of authority, leaving no room for argument. "It's better for business if a strong hand guides the family affairs." Her mother, once full of laughter and song, had trembled as she tried to intervene. "Chukwu huli ani," she pleaded, tears falling on her embroidered wrapper. "Let me stay in my home. Your brother, my husband, would want that." Nneka's eyes had flicked with impatience. "Life is for the strong," she had said, voice cold as elaichi spice. "Crying won't build a house." The estate's lawyer arrived the next morning. He bore documents, title deeds, contracts, a single gold ring engraved with the Okeke crest. "Your aunt has the legal right," he explained softly to Adaora's mother. "All assets have been transferred to her name." Adaora remembered the image of her mother, collapsed on the marble floor, wrapper soaked with tears. She remembered the shame that burned her cheeks as neighbors whispered, and how she had covered her face, wishing she could disappear. In that moment, she vowed that one day she would reclaim her dignity and her mother's. Now, years later, she closed her eyes and heard Nneka's decisive footsteps on the tiled veranda. The aunt had managed to bury every trace of controversy under a polished veneer of generosity. To outsiders, she appeared magnanimous and just, yet her benevolence always carried the price of fear. Adaora sighed, pushing herself up. She walked back toward the reception tent where Emeka greeted guests, his laughter bright as the Lego sun. But her path led instead to Neka's pavilion. The aunt sat upon a high-backed chair carved from ebony, coral beads cascading over her wrapper, and beside her sat Chief Uche, an elder who had once been her father's confidant. "Your wedding is splendid," Chief Uche said with a respectful bow. His deep voice carried both admiration and caution. "Neka, you have done well." Neka inclined her head, smoothing the folds of her wrapper. "The family must present a united front, Chief. Prosperity and stability are our legacy." Adaora paused just out of sight, listening. The aunt's words struck her as an echo of that day in Aba. But she would not remain unseen a moment longer. She stepped forward, each movement deliberate. Neka looked up, expression composed. The chief nodded, an invitation, or perhaps a challenge. "Ejekihu," Adaora said, greeting her aunt in Igbo. "Aunt Neka." "Dear child," Neka replied, voice a cool breeze. "I'm pleased you could join us." Adaora's chest tightened. "I wanted to thank you for sponsoring today's celebration. The decorations, the music, you spared no expense." Neka's smile held faint amusement. "A wedding is a reflection of the family's honor. It must shine." Adaora hesitated, then spoke with sudden steadiness. "But there was a time you did not uplift my mother. You cast her out and claimed everything. Do you not see that this day could have been different?" A hush fell. Chief Uche's brow furrowed. Coral beads glinted like warning lights. "Adaora," Neka said softly, "I took charge because leadership demanded sacrifice. Your mother could not bear the burden." "Your burden became her exile," Adaora countered. "You took our home, our inheritance, even father's wedding ring. Do you not know what that cost us?" A thin smile curved Neka's lips. "I gave you an example of strength. I showed that tears do not build kingdoms." "Strength without compassion is tyranny," Adaora said, voice ringing across the courtyard. Nearby guests turned, curious and shocked. Neka rose, graceful and unyielding. "Have you forgotten your place, child?" Adaora squared her shoulders. "My place is beside my husband, forging a new path. But today, I will not stand silent." Before Chief Uche could intervene, Adaora turned and walked away, heart pounding like a talking drum. Whispers trailed behind, swift as shadows. She sprinted toward Emeka, whose eyes widened in alarm. "Adaora!" he exclaimed. "What happened?" She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his agbada. His scent grounded her. "I faced her," she whispered. "I told her what she did." Emeka held her. "You were brave. She didn't strike you." "Not yet," Adaora said, pulling back. "But the spark is lit." They returned to the tent as music resumed, but Adaora's gaze never left the pavilion. Neka sat perched like a queen surveying her realm, coral beads and velvet wrapper immaculate. Adaora tasted palm wine on her tongue, bitter and sweet, and realized this wedding would not only unite two souls, it would awaken a reckoning long overdue. Later that afternoon, Adaora's mother found her in the garden behind the pavilion, tending to hibiscus blooms. Her hair was streaked with gray now, but her eyes held a quiet dignity. Adaora knelt and took her hand. "Mama, I spoke to her," she said softly. "I told her I would not forgive until she makes amends." Her mother's lips curved with both pride and pain. "You did right, my child. Some wounds must be named before they can heal." Adaora rose, brushing soil from her skirt. "This family, we will rebuild what was lost. I promise you that." Her mother placed a hand on her cheek. "Remember, Adaora, our ancestors favor those who seek justice with a gentle hand. Rage alone will consume you." Adaora nodded. I will be both fierce and merciful. As the sun lowered and the wedding feast prepared to give way to twilight dances, Adaora stood with her mother beneath the hibiscus trees. Across the courtyard, she watched Nneka slip away from her pavilion, escorted by attendants to change into evening robes. Adaora clenched her coral beads, grounding herself in purpose. When Nneka reappeared in a deep indigo wrapper trimmed with gold, the compound fell silent in anticipation. Adaora lifted her chin, ready for whatever came next. This chapter of her life, written in tears, courage, and ancestral resolve, was far from over. The sun cast long shadows across the white canopy of the reception tent as the MC's voice rang out. Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, please rise and welcome the pillar of our lineage, the architect of today's grand celebration, Aunt Nneka Okeke. Trumpets blared, and guests stood, raising their glasses of palm wine and sparkling soda in salute. A hush followed as Nneka swept through the aisle, her coral bead necklace clinking like distant bells. She moved with effortless grace, an embodiment of pride and command, her wrapper of deep crimson velvet trailing behind her like a royal train. Adaora sat at the head table beside Emeka, her hand resting lightly on his. She studied her aunt's approach, the way her eyes flicked over the assembled crowd, assessing loyalty and fear in equal measure. At times, Adaora thought she saw a flicker of pride behind the mask, but most of all, she saw the same look that had haunted her childhood, the glint of a woman born to rule. Thank you, Nneka's voice carried, amplified by the speakers. Today we gather not only to celebrate a union of two hearts, but to honor the promise of new beginnings. She lifted the microphone, her coral beads trailing like flames. Adaora Okeke, my niece, our shining star, was born under the blessing of our ancestors, destined to bring honor to our name. Guests murmured in appreciation. Mothers dabbed their eyes, grandfathers lifted canes in salute. Adaora's chest tightened as Nneka spoke of her niece's achievements, top of her class at the University of Lagos, scholarships awarded in her name, millions donated to orphans in Onitsha. It was a litany of praise, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's blade. Let us remember, Nneka continued, the proverb, Igwe bu Ike, unity is strength. I stand here, not merely as the bearer of our family's legacy, but as its guardian. I took hard decisions so that our lineage would endure. She paused, leaning forward. When your father grew weak, I sacrificed comfort so that the estate would prosper. When your mother wept, I held firm, because tears, my dear Adaora, do not feed children or build homes. Adaora's smile stiffened. Each word was a drop of fire in her veins. She glanced at Emeka, whose jaw clenched in silent support. To the crowd, Nneka sounded generous and wise. But Adaora heard the unspoken triumph. She had prevailed. Nneka allowed a moment for applause. When the clapping subsided, she raised a hand. Today, my niece embarks on her most important journey. Emeka Nwosu, you are a good man, a president of your student union, a rising star in your firm. But remember, you stand on the shoulders of generations of Okeke women. She gestured toward Adaora. Your success is shared, Emeka. It belongs to all of us who shaped her. Some guests cheered, others exchanged uneasy looks. Adaora's mother pressed a handkerchief to her lips, tears shining. Adaora reached across Emeka to squeeze his hand. She's flattering him, she thought, but she's building walls around me. Nneka lowered her voice, leaning close to the mic. In our culture, we speak of Ani Agala Nwanya, let no one abandon their kin. But I ask you all, what kind of kin finds weakness unacceptable? Today we teach our children strength, resilience, discipline. She straightened, porcelain smile returning. We raised Adaora with tough love. And look where that love has brought her. At the final clause, Adaora felt her breath catch. The tent spun. She bent forward, her face flush as a sunset sky. Memories surged. 13-year-old Adaora, standing barefoot on the veranda, watching her mother dragged from the home they built. The thunder of servants' steps, the clatter of suitcases, the cold ring of iron gates slamming shut. Tears had washed her cheeks then, shame and anger had burned her heart. Now she sat, all eyes on her, forced to bask in the glow of false credit. She imagined Nneka perched up there, a queen in her castle, oblivious to the bodies she'd trampled on the path to power. Applause rippled again as Nneka finished. She offered Adaora the mic. "My dear, say a few words." Adaora stood, tremors coursing through her limbs. The guests hushed in anticipation. She raised the microphone, her coral beads clinking softly. For a moment, she considered speaking, thanking her aunt, praising her support. But the words died on her tongue. Instead, she looked straight at Nneka, whose smile was unwavering. Adaora's voice was soft, then firm. "Thank you, Aunt Nneka, for your kind words." She held the aunt's gaze. "But I learned more from love than from fear. My mother's kindness taught me compassion. My father's gentleness taught me courage." A murmur ran through the crowd. Nneka's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly. Adaora continued, "Today I stand here because of choices shaped by both strength and tenderness. I will honor my mother's memory by building homes with warmth, not walls with fear." Guests nodded, some smiling in approval. Nneka's smile faltered, and Adaora seized the moment. "Let this marriage be guided by love that uplifts, not authority that suffocates. Let our family legacy be written in empathy as much as in power." Silence followed. Then a single clap, her mother's. More hands joined. Adaora felt her heart swell. Emeka beamed at her. But Nneka sat, unmoving, coral beads still. Her eyes were dark pools. Adaora stepped down, replacing the mic stand. She looked toward the feast tent, where gourds of jollof rice and platters of ofe egusi awaited. "This is a new chapter," she whispered to Emeka. Emeka kissed her temple. "Indeed, my bride." He led her back to the head table. Behind them, Nneka rose. Her footsteps were soft on the ground. She approached the microphone again, as though the ceremony required addenda. Adaora's stomach clenched. Nneka cleared her throat politely. "Before we continue," she said, voice controlled, "let us toast the bride and groom." She turned slightly, her smile renewed. "And remember, she is successful today because we, her family, raised her with tough love." A gasp rippled through the tent. Adaora felt blood surge to her cheeks. The air went still, like the moment before a rainstorm's first drop. Every guest's eyes flicked between Adaora and Nneka. A hush deeper than night settled. The ceremony, this smiling snake and the speech, had laid bare the poison beneath the honeyed words. Faces turned pale, children froze mid-step, their eyes wide in shock. Drummers stilled their sticks, servers stood motionless. In that loaded silence, Adaora sensed every heartbeat held, and the moment for her choice arrived. And she would have to choose, endure the memory, or break the silence once and for all. The moment Aunt Nneka uttered the final words, "She is successful today because we, her family, raised her with tough love," something inside Adaora snapped. Drummers hesitated, then fell silent. The guests froze in place, cutlery halfway to mouths of rice and meat. The white tent, once the picture of celebration, felt like a cage closing in on her. Adaora's heart thundered like the equi-drums she had heard so many times growing up. This time, however, the rhythm came from within her chest, driving her toward the stage. She rose from her seat at the banquet table, the coral beads around her wrist jangling in protest. Emeka reached to steady her, but Adaora gently shook him away. Her resolve had taken shape. The murmur of the crowd swelled as she strode forward, her white lace gown brushing the polished marble floor. Each step echoed like a verdict. Nneka's smile faltered. She blinked once, as if surprised that the niece she had praised stood now to confront her. Adaora lifted the microphone, fingers trembling but voice clear. "Aunt Nneka," she began, the tent falling silent. "I must speak the truth you refuse to see." She paused, gathering every ounce of courage nurtured by her mother's gentle voice and her father's unwavering faith. "You raise your hand in blessing today, but your heart still holds the cold ambition that destroyed my family." A gasp rippled through the guests. Nneka rose, coral beads swinging. "Adaora, my child, there are limits." Adaora shook her head vehemently. limits. Proper is my mother kneeling before you, begging for mercy. Proper is her wrapper drenched in tears while you claimed everything, land, inheritance, even my father's wedding ring. The reference to the heirloom silenced murmurs. Today, I refuse to let that injustice stand. She stepped forward. Nneka's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this insolence, she hissed. But Adaora raised her hand and struck with all the pent-up anguish of years. Slap. The sound cracked like thunder. Coral beads rattled on Nneka's wrist as her jeweled earring swung free, catching the afternoon light. For an instant, everything froze. Chairs tipped, forks clattered, the bride's veil rustled like frightened wings. Then the tent erupted. Some guests shrieked, others cheered Adaora's courage. A few elderly aunts clutched pearls, muttering that such a spectacle was unbecoming. A photographer's camera fired rapidly, capturing the exact moment of impact. Adaora's outstretched hand, Nneka's tilted head, that fleeting glimpse of fear in her aunt's eyes. Adaora held the microphone again, voice ringing with righteous fire. You have stolen from my mother and wounded my soul. But today, I reclaim my lineage and my dignity. She looked to her mother, standing behind the crowd, tears glistening. Mama, this is for you. Pointing to Nneka, this slap is not vengeance. It is justice. Emeka hurried to her side, wrapping a protective arm around her waist. His support bolstered her, and she continued. Let every person here bear witness. Compassion, not cruelty, is the bedrock of a family. Strength comes from love, not fear. Adaora felt the weight of ancestral eyes upon her. She heard her father's gentle voice in her mind. Stand tall, my daughter. She felt her mother's spirit. Speak truth, child. Nneka recovered, coral beads and velvet wrapper immaculate. Her lips curled in cold fury. She looked as though she would strike back, but then she stepped away, retrieving the microphone. You disgrace this family, she spat, voice quivering. After everything I have done. Yes, Adaora replied, calm as a river. After everything you have done to destroy my mother, yes. Her words landed like stones. I am your niece, and you have broken the bond of kinship. But I will not be broken. I choose my mother's kindness over your tyranny. A silence returned, no applause, no cries, just the weight of truth hanging in the air. Then, slowly, an elderly uncle began to clap, his stooped shoulders straightening. Others joined until the tent thrummed with applause and ululation. It was a chorus of the brave, honoring Adaora's stand. In the press of faces, Adaora saw some scowl in disapproval, others beamed with pride. Her mother produced the stolen wedding ring, her father's ring, and placed it around Adaora's neck like a sacred talisman. Adaora pressed it to her heart. Thank you, Mama, she whispered. Nneka, visibly shaken, turned and strode away, her entourage parting before her like reeds in a storm. She ascended the veranda steps while the music resumed softly, reluctant to drown out the moment's gravity. Emeka guided Adaora back to the head table, taking her hand. You were magnificent, he murmured. She nodded, relief washing through her. It's done, she said. The poison has been named. The guests returned to their seats, whispers buzzing like cicadas. Waiters resumed service, but plates of jollof rice and suya were passed with reverence, as though the feast honored more than a marriage. It honored a daughter's reclamation of her family's heart. By dusk, news of Adaora's slap had sped beyond the mansion gates. WhatsApp groups brimmed with forwarded videos captioned, #slap that freed her. Local radio stations replayed the crackling audio, village youths huddled around glowing screens, rewinding the moment when justice landed. Even relatives abroad in London and New York saw the clip nearly in real time, commenting with pride and astonishment. Viral waves carried Adaora's name across continents, sealing her place as a symbol of courageous reckoning and familial truth. Inside the veranda, Aunt Nneka removed her coral beads and sank onto the ornate bench, the memory of the slap echoing in each heartbeat. Outside, Adaora stood beneath a paper lantern, whispering a silent thank you to her ancestors for guiding her hand. Emeka joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as they gazed at the night sky where stars drifted like ancestral watchers. The wedding stretched on, drums once hesitant now thrumming with renewed vigor, marking not only a union of hearts but the birth of a new legacy, one where truth reigned over terror and love triumphed in the face of fear. The morning after the confrontation dawned with a heavy haze over the Okeke family mansion. The revelry of yesterday's wedding shimmers now like a mirage. Adaora woke to the hum of cicadas and the scent of fresh rain. She slipped from the bed she shared with Emeka, careful not to disturb him, and crossed the mosaic-tiled floor to the veranda. There, she found her mother, wrapped in a white wrapper, gazing out over the gardens where hibiscus blossoms shivered in the gentle breeze. "Mama," Adaora said softly, touching her mother's arm. "How did you sleep?" Her mother turned, eyes warm. "I slept well, child. Last night, for the first time in years, I felt a weight lifted." She held Adaora's hand. "Your voice brought justice yesterday." Adaora knelt beside her, chest tightening. "I wish it had not cost so much." Her mother brushed a finger across her cheek. "It cost truth. And truth was worth every tremor of the heart." Behind them, laughter echoed from the courtyard. The reception tent was being transformed into a day festival space. Red carpets replaced with colorful mats, rows of stools arranged under shade canopies. Musicians tuned their instruments. Village women prepared bowls of fresh fruit, hot akara, and steaming ugwa soup. Yet beneath the activity, a quiet tension hummed like an undercurrent in a river. Adaora's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, a flood of messages on WhatsApp. From cousin Ifeoma, "God bless your courage." Another, from Uncle Obi, "I stand with you, niece." And then, one from distant relatives. From Aunt Chioma, "Remain respectful. Do not let pride destroy you." Beneath the proud messages lay murmurs of caution and disapproval. The family was splintering. Emeka emerged in a crisp white shirt, his agbada folded over a chair. He wrapped an arm around her waist. "Good morning, my warrior queen." He kissed her temple. "Ready for the day?" She nodded. But uneasy. She gestured toward the veranda. "The house is divided." He sighed and slipped a hand into hers. "Then we will stand together." He led her down the steps and across the dew-kissed lawn, toward the chapel where latecomers were gathering. Inside, relatives clustered in small groups. To the left, a circle formed around Aunt Neka, who stood imperious in a navy wrapper. Her headgear was tied with unyielding precision. She conversed with Chief Uche and other elders, their low voices carefully modulated. Adaora caught fragments: dignity, family honor, unseemly spectacle. Opposite them, Chimamanda, Adaora's cousin, spoke up. It was long overdue. She deserved that. Others nodded vigorously. Adaora breathed in, steadying herself. She approached Neka's group. The aunt's companions parted, and Neka's eyes met hers, cool, measuring. Adaora kept her expression calm. "Aunt Neka," she began. Nearby voices hushed. "Are you well?" Neka's lips thinned. "I am as well as one can be after a betrayal broadcast to the world." Her voice was low, barely above a whisper, yet chilling. "You have ruined my reputation." Adaora held her ground. "I restored my mother's. Family honor is not founded on fear." Aunt Neka inhaled sharply. "You forget protocol. You humiliated me." "I honored truth," Adaora replied. "That humility benefits no one." Their standoff crackled, but Chief Uche stepped between them. "Let us not fracture this day further," he admonished. "The marriage must continue." Aunt Neka inclined her head curtly and departed, counselors fanning her path. Adaora exhaled, relief mingling with regret. Outside, Emeka guided her to the sunlit courtyard where drums began again. A troupe of dancers in bright wrappers performed to lift spirits. Adaora watched, heart torn between celebration and sorrow. Music and movement sought to heal the rift, but she felt the divide everywhere. In whispered glances, in the careful distance some relatives kept. During the mid-morning feast, Adaora's uncle Obi raised a toast. His deep voice carried across the courtyard. "Let us drink to this union and to the courageous spirit of my niece, Adaora. May our family heal and grow stronger." Glasses clinked. Some raised palm wine high, others only nodded in gratitude. Adaora felt tears prick her eyes, tears of relief, of hope, of longing for wholeness. Later, under a mango tree, she found Chimamanda. They sat on a woven mat. Chimamanda offered a bowl of sweet watermelon. "You were amazing," she said. "My children can't stop talking about it." Adaora managed a small smile. "I feel the cost in every soft look." Chimamanda reached out and squeezed her hand. "This is a new path. There will be hardship, but also healing." By afternoon, the dancing resumed in full force. Emeka led Adaora into a circle of family. They clapped and spun to rhythms blending Igbo highlife with modern Afrobeat. For a moment, Adaora forgot the divide as laughter bubbled up, joining the beat. Yet when she looked to the veranda, she saw Nneka alone, poised upon an ornate bench, watching the celebrations with unreadable expression. Adaora lifted her chin, offering a respectful nod. Nneka's gaze flickered, then she inclined her head in acknowledgement. That single moment felt like a truce, fragile as spun sugar. The sun dipped low, and lanterns were lit. Guests gathered for final blessings under the iroko tree. Chief Uche spoke, voice resonant. "Family is like a tree. Branches may sway in different directions, but roots bind us together. Tonight we reaffirm our bonds." One by one, relatives placed kola nut pieces at the tree's base, pouring libations of palm wine. Adaora and Emeka knelt side by side, offering their own. The cool night air carried the scent of jasmine and roasted corn. When it was Nneka's turn, she stepped forward with measured grace. She knelt before the tree, touching the kola nut to the earth. Adaora watched, heart fluttering as her aunt murmured an Igbo prayer, a prayer for forgiveness, for unity. The words were soft, but the sincerity in her tone was unmistakable. A hush settled, then a gentle breeze rustled the branches. Fireflies flickered like stars brought low. In that sacred moment, Adaora felt something shift deep within the family. Fractures mending through ritual, through shared breath, through humility. After the ceremony, Nneka rose and approached Adaora. Guests gave them space. The two women met beneath the iroko's broad canopy, its trunk wide enough to shelter generations. "I apologize," Nneka said quietly, coral beads gleaming faintly in the lantern light. "For the pain I caused your mother, and for forgetting that strength must be tempered by mercy." Her voice cracked with the weight of admission. "I recognize your courage." Adaora's throat tightened. She stepped forward and embraced her aunt. The gesture felt like releasing a lifetime of grief in a single heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered. "Let us rebuild together." Around them, family members watched, some wiping eyes, some smiling in awe. The night, once heavy with tension, now shimmered with promise. When Adaora and Emeka returned to their room, the mansion quiet at last, Emeka held her close. "You have changed everything," he murmured. She pressed her forehead to his. "We have changed everything," she corrected. "Together." And as sleep claimed her, Adaora dreamed of the Okeke estate restored, not as a monument to power, but as a home built upon love, compassion, and fortified by truth. The dawn of a new day broke gently over the Okeke estate, its red brick walls glowing in the early light. Adaora awoke to a chorus of birdsong and the distant hum of village life stirring awake. The events of the past days, wedding triumph, confrontation, reconciliation, felt woven into every dawn breeze. She rose from the bed of white linen, where Emeka still slept, and wrapped herself in a kaitenge robe. Stepping onto the veranda, she breathed deeply of the cool morning air, tasting freedom like the tang of zobo. By the koi pond, her mother knelt to scatter birdseed for visiting doves. When Adaora approached, her mother smiled, tears glimmering. "My child," she said softly, "you have done what I could not. You carried our truth into the open." Adaora knelt beside her and took her hand. "We did this together," she replied. "I stood on the shoulders of your courage." They embraced, and Adaora felt the final burdens of shame and fear dissolve into the soil of their ancestors. As sunlight filtered through jacaranda blossoms, she considered the path ahead, a life where truth and compassion guided every step. At midday, a small troop of griots arrived, carrying bora drums and ojin bells. They began to recite the legend of Adaora's stand, weaving her story into the ancient tapestry of Igbo folklore. Rising and falling chants told of a widow's tear, a niece's mighty slap, and a family's rebirth. Listeners tapped feet, children clapped in delight, and elders nodded, remembering their own youth. Adaora watched with wonder as her life took on the cadence of myth. Inside the mansion, the staff prepared for the day's ceremonies. The feast tents transformed into workshops and community gatherings. Artisans set up stalls to teach weaving and beadwork. Elders arranged storytelling circles for children to learn village lore. Adaora had insisted the wedding finish in service to the community, an affirmation that celebration and giving could walk hand in hand. The feast that followed was a lavish communal meal, where farmers from neighboring villages contributed baskets of ripe plantains, smoked fish, and groundnuts. Women ladled bowls of ofe onugbu and fiery pepper stew, while men skewered sticks of marinated chicken over smoking grills. As plates passed, conversations bloomed from personal gratitude to plans for cooperative farms and school renovations funded by the new trust. Adaora moved from group to group, listening and encouraging as tears glistened in eyes weary of strife. By mid-morning, guests gathered under a canopy of African whitewood trees. A microphone stood on a dais of woven mats, and benches circled the space. Village elders, diaspora relatives on videolink, and friends in traditional attire filled the semicircle. The aroma of suya and roasted yams drifted from serving tables. Adaora stepped forward first, her coral beads replaced by simple ivory cowries to symbolize peace. She greeted the crowd in Igbo, "Ndu onu, thank you all for joining us." Her voice carried the warmth of homecoming. She spoke of the journey from silence to truth, of confronting power with courage, and of healing wounds through compassion. She quoted the proverb, "Uni amu ase erigi," he who learns from the mat perhaps eats the earliest. She urged the audience to embrace lessons from hardship to build strength. When Adaora finished, applause rippled through the circle. She stepped aside as Aunt Neka approached, coral beads now resting quietly on a side table. The aunt's wrapper gleamed in shades of sunrise gold. Neka spoke with measured grace. "I stand here today not as an unyielding matriarch, but as a servant of our lineage. I have learned that true strength is tempered by mercy, and that authority without empathy can crumble." She bowed to Adaora. "Thank you, my niece, for teaching me this truth." A hush followed, then cheers rose as the two women embraced before the assembled crowd. Children giggled and clapped, elders offered ululations. Even the diaspora faces on screens smiled and wiped tears. After the forum, Adaora and Neka joined hands to inaugurate the Okeke Family Trust, a fund dedicated to supporting widows, orphans, and educational scholarships for girls in their region. Papers were signed in colored ink, as drummers provided a rhythm of hope. Emeka stood proudly beside Adaora, his eyes shining like polished onyx. As the day passed into afternoon, brand representatives discreetly approached Adaora. A documentary crew from Lagos offered to film the family's journey for a feature on resilience and cultural transformation. A local NGO invited her to speak at a leadership summit. Adaora listened with cautious excitement, weighing each opportunity against her commitment to authenticity. Under the shade of a mango tree, she found her mother and spoke softly. "Mama, tomorrow I leave for Lagos to film. Will you come with me? I want you by my side." Her mother's eyes brightened. "I would walk barefoot to the ends of the earth with you, my daughter." Adaora smiled, hugging her. Together, they felt the promise of what lay ahead, a story of African women reshaping tradition and forging new legacies. As dusk fell, Aunt Neka invited Adaora and Emeka to walk the boundary of the estate. They strolled beneath mango and irako trees illuminated by amber lanterns. Neka shared memories of her own mother's guidance, tears glinting in her eyes. She spoke of how power without humility can isolate a leader, and how Adaora's stand had reminded her of true kinship. Adaora listened, feeling the bridging of generations under the arch of stars. As evening approached, lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow across the compound. A final celebration commenced, music blending traditional Ojin horns with modern guitar riffs, dancers in vibrant wrappers telling stories through movement. Adaora and Emeka took the dance floor, their steps a conversation of love and partnership. Aunt Neka joined for a moment, her laughter softening the years of distance. When the music faded, Adaora stepped to the edge of the tent and looked upward. The night sky stretched vast and untroubled, stars gleaming like ancestral beacons. She whispered a prayer of gratitude, to her parents, to her ancestors, to the community that held them. She felt the weight of legacy lift, replaced by the warmth of collective hope. Later, alone on the veranda, Adaora unfastened the wedding ring hung on a ribbon at her throat and placed it gently on her palm. Its gold surface glowed under the lantern light. She pressed it to her heart. "This is just the beginning," she murmured. As the ancestors say, Chi naaga nke oma anagi eshifu yuzoya, the soul that walks rightly never forgets its path. The end. Enjoyed this story? Hit like, subscribe, and join the AfriVibe family. Your support keeps our stories coming. See you soon.